of the transcendental body of the Lord. It has been described in many places before this that the Lord assumed a gigantic body, like that of Karnadakshaya Vishnu, from whose hair pores innumerable universes have generated. The body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is described as sprouting the lotus stem, within which all the planets of the universe remain. And at the top of the stem is a lotus flower on which Lord Brahma is born. In the creation of the material world, the Supreme Lord undoubtedly assumes a gigantic body. And the living entities also get bodies, big or small, according to necessity. For example, an elephant gets a gigantic body according to its needs. So also an ant gets its body according to its needs. Similarly, if the personality of Godhead assumes a gigantic body to accommodate the universes or the planets of a particular universe, there is no difference in the principle of assuming or accepting a particular type of body in terms of necessity. A living being and the Lord cannot be distinguished simply by the difference in the magnitude of the body. So, answer depends on the significance of the body of the Lord as distinguished from the body of the common living being. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnanadana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Bhupa Gadamhayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Bhaganatan Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpadet Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastude Dapta Kanchana Goyangi Radhe Vrindavaneshari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalvatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadaya Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for being here this morning. In today's verse, we are exploring a question that is asked by Parikshit Maharaj. This whole chapter, the name of this chapter is Questions by King Parikshit. So in this particular verse, Parikshit Maharaj is asking the difference between ordinary living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So on that note, we'll quickly talk a bit about questions first. So the questions, in general, they are very, very important. So I was listening to a class by a few different devotees, and questions in general, they have two benefits. Like questions, they have many benefits. If you ask a question, you get some benefit. But to summarize those benefits, there are two main points. Firstly, they help us clear our own doubts that we may have on the subject matter, and they also increase our knowledge. But interestingly, when we go on the spiritual platform, there is another benefit of asking questions, and that is that the submissive process of asking a question actually purifies us. So without inquiry, we can see that spiritual advancement becomes very, very troublesome, because spiritual advancement basically relies on asking questions. We'll get back to this point a bit more later, time, but for now we'll focus on the main aspects explored in this verse. So in this verse it explores that Lord Krishna, he has different parts and parcels. We are all part and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in due course we also have our own necessities. So what happens is that we are all part and parcels of the Supreme Lord. In quality, we do have the same qualities as the Lord, but we have them to a specific level. So in our case, we have a very minute level. We have a minute level of the Lord's potencies according to our necessities, according to our needs. Because Krishna, as we see in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Krishna is a Hamsa Rasa Prabhu. He is all pervasive. Everything emanates from Lord Krishna. And we cannot possibly compare ourselves with Krishna because our necessities are different. Krishna's necessities are different. In a class given by Srila Prabhupada in 1974 in Bombay, Srila Prabhupada gave a very common example of an ant and an elephant. And he was saying that both the ant and elephant, they both have strength. They both have functions of the senses. So they both can see, both can taste, both have a nose, both can walk. But the only thing is that these senses are used according to the necessity. So, for example, an elephant is obviously very, very big, very, very large. However, an ant is very small, according to their necessity. And an ant, Srila Prabhupada was explaining that an elephant eats around 40 kilos. Of course, we eat more than 40 kilos, but an elephant eats 40 kilos. You can't give the same 40 kilos to an ant. An ant would only eat a few grams. So the same way, we cannot compare ourselves to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because just like an elephant, he has more power. He has the same strengths and the same senses. Everything is similar as the ant. He has everything that's similar to the ant. The only thing is that it's a different scale. So according to the elephant's necessity, it's larger. According to an ant's necessity, it's smaller. So no one can compare themselves to the Supreme Lord, just as we can't compare an elephant to an ant. So in the purport of chapter 10, text number 8, Srila Prabhupada does say that there is no supreme controller other than Lord Krishna. One who understands Krishna in such a way from a bona fide spiritual master, with references from Vedic literature, engages all his energy in Krishna consciousness and becomes a truly learned man. In comparison to him, all others who do not know Krishna properly are but fools. Only a fool will consider Krishna to be an ordinary man. So we can see that what people tend to do is that they tend to understand Krishna according to their own capacity. I remember, I think when I was in year 1 or year 2, at that time I went to a Catholic school, a private school, and there the teacher, she gave a very nice example to understand this point. Because one person asked, how great is God? And the teacher, what she did, she had a whiteboard marker, she held the whiteboard marker, and she said that we are on the whiteboard marker. We are in the whiteboard marker. We cannot understand what is outside the whiteboard marker. So in the same way, we can't understand Krishna because we are in the material world. The material world is like the creation of Krishna. We can't understand who Krishna is according to our own calculations, according to our own measurements. So in the same, because of this, this purport says that we have to approach the spiritual master in order to understand Krishna more fully. And this is exactly what Parikshit Maharaj is doing to Shukadeva Goswami in this verse. Parikshit Maharaj is inquiring to Shukadeva Goswami about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in Bhagavad Gita 4.34, Krishna says, Tadvini pranipatena paripashena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas sattva darshana. So there he says, pariprashnena. Pariprashnena means to ask questions, to give submissive inquiries. But what is important is the placing of these words. Because we all know that when we go to a spiritual master, we have to approach him, ask questions, we have to do some service to him. But the very important thing in this context is that this verse actually lays out what comes first, what is of high priority. Because Krishna says we have to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, but right after approaching a spiritual master, Krishna says, inquire from him submissively. We all know this verse very well, but in the first word of the second line, Krishna says that we have to inquire submissively to the Supreme Lord. And then we can start rendering services. So asking questions is like very, very important. It's the first process of devotional service. We have to ask questions first. And what we have right now with us is a result of inquiry. We can see right now we have Srimad Bhagavatam in front of us. If Parikshit Maharaj didn't ask Shukadeva Goswami the questions that he has, we won't have the Srimad Bhagavatam as it is today. Even we see in the Mahabharata, for example, Arjuna asked Krishna a certain number of questions. And if Arjuna didn't ask those questions, then we wouldn't have Bhagavad Gita with us today. Same thing, most of the Puranas, if we look at the Upanishads and the Puranas, we can see that most of our Puranas come from some sort of dialogue, some sort of verbal dialogue, where questions are being asked and answered. I was reading an article by one devotee, and he said that most of our scriptures written in the form of dialogue where questions are asked and answered. So, for example, we have the Srimad Bhagavatam with us. Even in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are questions that are being asked and answered. For example, Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking Narada Muni, or Vasudeva is asking Narada Muni, for example. There are many questions and many answers that are being given. So we can understand that what we have with us right now, it is because of asking questions. And the Srimad Bhagavatam itself is a chain of questions. First we have Vyasadeva and Narada Muni. So Vyasadeva asked Narada Muni, why am I still not satisfied after writing so many Puranas, after writing so many books? Then after that comes Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. And then after that comes Sunaka Rishi and Sudha Goswami. So we can see that there's a triple chain of asking questions in the Srimad Bhagavatam alone. So just in Srimad Bhagavatam, questions are being asked and answered. So on that note, we all know that we have many Upanishads with us today. We have Gita Upanishad, Shri Upanishad, so many different Upanishads. But have we actually stopped to think, what does Upanishad mean? When we break down the word Upanishad, we could see that Upa means by, and Nishad means sit down. And Srila Prabhupada once said that the meaning of Upanishad means to sit down near a spiritual master and ask questions, or spiritual master or authority and ask questions. So Upanishad itself means that we have to sit down and ask questions to someone of a higher authority. And our Vedic literature shows this. We have to go and approach someone of a higher authority to understand the subject matter better. So for us to progress further in Krishna consciousness, we have to ask questions. Because if we don't have any knowledge, we can't really go anywhere. We need the knowledge of where we are, what are we doing right now, what is our goal. We need to know all that if we want to progress further. For example, driving a car, for example. You have to have knowledge on how to start a car before you actually start driving. You don't want to end up halfway through the freeway and realize that the brake is not working, or you don't know how to pull the brake. So similarly, we have to ask questions and place inquiries to solidify our knowledge, so that we can actually cement our place in Krishna consciousness more solidly. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada actually calls us a first-class fool. In Los Angeles in 1973, Srila Prabhupada gave a class that without any inquiry in Kali Yuga, everyone will think that they are God. And he said that that's all. This is going on fool's paradise. So this will not help. So if we don't ask questions, and Srila Prabhupada is saying that will be fool's paradise. Right now, amongst the youth, there's now a new saying, ignorance is bliss. We can see a lot of youth, they believe the slogan, ignorance is bliss. But ignorance is not bliss, because we won't make any progress if we are ignorant, necessarily. So, in this verse particularly, what is very nice is that Parikshit Maharaj shows us, through his own example, how we should ask questions. So, in the Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada says, one should know how Maharaj Parikshit intelligently puts questions before the spiritual master for scientific understanding of the transcendental body of the Lord. So that's the phrase, scientific understanding of the body of the Lord. That is very, very important. In the Mundaka Upanishad, there it describes that there's Paravidya and Aparavidya. Paravidya we know is Vedic literature, what we have with us today, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Spiritual knowledge, that is Paravidya. On the other side, there's Aparavidya. Aparavidya is like the material knowledge that we get from school, from university. That is material knowledge. That is Aparavidya. Now we can see that Paravidya can be received by asking questions. So Parikshit Maharaj is asking Shukadeva Goswami for scientific understanding. And he's reaching scientific understanding because he is asking about Paravidya. Paravidya is spiritual knowledge. And knowledge in that regard is very, very important because of that. Even when we look at Aparavidya, asking questions is a necessity. If we go on our material educational system, asking questions is very, very important. I remember, I think when I was maybe 3 or 4 years back, I had an English assessment, and they had the report sheet. But in that report sheet, it was all out of 25 marks. but they had one separate category that was worth 5 marks, and that was asking questions. Now, I didn't believe this at first. I thought this is nothing. But I actually got marked down because I didn't ask any questions to the teacher. Because what the teacher does is that from year 7 to year 9 or year 10, I don't know if it goes beyond that, but they actually give you a mark if you ask any questions. So asking questions is very, very important. Even if you know something, asking questions, there's no harm in asking questions, and plus it actually benefits us. So questioning gives us, we can understand that when we ask questions, we get knowledge. Now the question is, why do we need knowledge? Like, as I was saying before, people say ignorance is bliss. So why do we need knowledge? In Bhagavad Gita 4.37, Srila Prabhupada says that as a blazing fire turns firewood into ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. So Krishna is saying that the knowledge that we have burns to fire all the reactions of material activities that we have. In Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Krishna also says, Sarvasya jaham hridi sanivisto, mata smriti jnana bohanam ja. There he says that he is seated in everyone's heart. And from Krishna, remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness, they all come. So true knowledge actually comes from Krishna. Regardless of how much knowledge we actually have, that knowledge is actually useless without Krishna. Our modern day educational system, it teaches us that we have to be very intelligent, we have to have a lot of knowledge. But when we actually look at the historical evidences that we have, for example, we can see that no matter how much knowledge we have, that knowledge is useless if Krishna is not in the center of that knowledge. I was reading an article by His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. He gave a very nice article on Chanakya Pandit. Now, we all know Chanakya Pandita is a very advanced politician. He's a very tactical strategist in India during his time. And in this article, one devotee actually asked a question that was Chanakya Pandita and a devotee? So what Chaitanya Charan Prabhu did is that he actually got references from all of from all Chanakya Pandita's books, all of his teachings, and from there he showed that in the first sutra of the Chanakya Niti Shastra, so we all know Chanakya Pandita is someone very, very advanced in political science, and even Srila Prabhupada does quote him to an extent. But what we also need to understand is that even Chanakya Pandita, he dedicated everything to Lord Vishnu. He did put Lord Vishnu in the center. And there's evidence to show this. In the first sutra of the Chanakya Niti Shastra, Chanakya Pandita says, I humbly bow down to Lord Vishnu, the supreme Lord of all the three worlds. So that's the first verse of the prayer section. And so we can see that even Chanakya Pandita, like he's materially has so much knowledge. He is a politician, he's a strategist, he did so many things during his time. He's, very diplomatically. But what we need to understand is that even Chanakya Pandita, he puts Lord Vishnu in the center, he puts Krishna in the center. And what we can actually see is that in the very first verse, he offers his obeisances to Lord Vishnu. So we can understand that we have so much knowledge with us today. However, we also need to understand that that knowledge has to be dedicated to Lord Krishna. Otherwise, what happens is that when we put our intelligence on Krishna, then even upper avidya becomes sanctified. I remember my own spiritual master, he's my own Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Janananda Goswami Maharaj. He was talking to me personally, and he was saying that he told me that, his own words, you can choose whatever career path you want. You can be a lawyer, a doctor. As long as whatever you do, you have to try and put Krishna in the center. So obviously, there are many devotees who want to become pure devotees. They want to renounce everything. However, we can see that from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was raising the point that we can renounce everything, but what really, really matters is that we have to use our intelligence for Krishna. On that note, in the Mahabharata itself, we can see that there's a test of real intelligence. Mahabharata, as we all know, was a battle between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And we can see in the Mahabharata that the Kauravas, they had so many complex military formations. Like if we read the Mahabharata, we could see that the description of those formations are like, your hairs really start raising on end. They're amazing, intricately designed military formations. And we can also see that the Mahabharata has many intelligent personnel on their side. For example, there's Bhishma, Bhishma Dev. He was taught in political science, Ayurveda, military science, from so many different spiritual masters. We could see even Dronacharya. Dronacharya was the son of Bharadavaj Rishi. And he was the teacher of both the Pandavas and the Kauravas. There was Shakuni. Now, Shakuni was an expert diplomat. He was very, very strategic in what he did. Even though what he did was very corrupt, still we can actually appreciate that what he did, only a true diplomat or a true strategist can do what he did. So obviously to do what Shakuni did, you have to have some sort of intelligence. Even Bhishma Dev, his spiritual masters were Parshuram. He got lessons from Sukacharya, Vishishta Rishi, Sanat Kumar, Brahaspati, and even Lord Indra. So we can see that on one side, the Kauravas were a side that had so much intelligence. All the big generals were very, very smart. But on the other side, there were the Pandavas. But still, the Pandavas still defeated the Kauravas. Why? Because they had Krishna in the center. In the last verse of Bhagavad Gita, we all know, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partha Dinodara. Wherever Krishna is, victory is almost certain. So what we can see is that the Mahabharata, the Kauravas had so many intelligent ways in their own camp, pretty much. They have intelligent generals, they had intelligent plans, they had intelligent strategies. Still they lost to Krishna, still they lost to the Pandavas. But why did they lose to the Pandavas? Because they had Krishna at their side. And interestingly, Yudhishthira Maharaj, he's renowned for asking questions. Like we look at the Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, or even in the Mahabharata, there are so many questions that Yudhishthira Maharaj asks. Even when he was in exile, Yudhishthira Maharaj asked a certain number of questions. For example, he asked questions to Markandeya Rishi, Vyasadeva, even Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram, for example. He asked so many questions. Even though Yudhishthira Maharaj, he's Dharmaraj. He knows everything. He knows about what true religiousness is, what true Dharma is, and he was the emperor of the whole world. At the same time, he still asked questions. So we can see that asking questions is very, very important. And because of this, the Pandavas had real intelligence. So the Kauravas, they had material intelligence, they had upper avidya, but the Pandavas, who were devotees, they had para avidya. And Srila Prabhupada, through his own example, he teaches us what real intelligence is. One time, Srila Prabhupada was sitting down and he was having a discussion with this one scholar. And they were having a discussion on who is God. Many times we do get asked this question, who is God? And this person actually said, had so many speculations on who was God. He said, God is this, God is that, God can be this. And Srila Prabhupada actually got really, really frustrated. If a person starts speculating in front of you, you will get frustrated. Like that person is beating the bush, as we say. You will get frustrated. So Srila Prabhupada got very frustrated and he called baby Saraswati, I think Shyam Sundar Prabhu's daughter. He called baby Saraswati. You might all know this pastime. He called her and asked, who is God? And she was playing, Krishna is God. And Prabhupada asked, okay, and who is Krishna? And baby Saraswati said, Krishna is God. And then he said, who is God? And he said, God is Krishna. So we can, and Srila Prabhupada looked at that person and said that, look, a 5-year-old girl knows who Krishna actually is and knows who God is. Why are you speculating so much? We can even see in Krishna consciousness, His Grace Laglavin Prabhu was given an example that we see so many Babajis, we see so many holy people who renounce everything. They let go of their family, let go of their bank balance, let go of their houses. They renounce everything. But what you do, you go to Badrika Ashram, you go to Vrindavan, for example, you go to the holy place, and what do you see? You see them, either they are sitting in front of a temple and smoking, or the very same people who have renounced everything, you can see that they're standing in a long line in front of the coffee shop in the morning. That's not true spiritual knowledge. They've renounced everything, they've let go of everything, but they're early in the morning, they are on the long line for, a chai shop, a coffee shop, a tea shop. Like, that is not true renunciation. But even if you ask one child of Krishna consciousness, like we have so many children, just ask one 5-year-old child, should you drink tea? Should you drink coffee? That child will immediately say, you should not drink tea, you should not drink coffee. So we can see that the children, especially, they have more knowledge than even even people who have renounced everything. People who have renounced, they're still confused on what true renunciation actually is. But even children, there's children, I know kids who are like 3 or 4 years old, and they actually know, what the 4 related principles are, what true Dharma is, what you should be doing in this life. So that is real intelligence. And in this material world, we're actually very fortunate that in ISKCON, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we have everything in the form of Srila Prabhupada's books and literature to help us get that real intelligence. And Srila Prabhupada, we all know, he's put so much effort constantly into writing books and giving lectures. And what the knowledge that we have, this is because of questions in the past. Like our scriptures, I'll say a significant percentage of our scriptures consist of questions. And what we have today is because of questions that were asked. I was listening to a class by His Grace Govinda Prabhu. Govind Prabhu is a brahmachari from Chopati, ISKCON Chopati, and he was giving a seminar on the Mahabharata. And his seminar was, he will be spending 2 days on one character of the Mahabharata. One person of the Mahabharata, he will spend 2 days, and there'll be 2-hour sessions. And he was saying that Arjuna, when we look at Arjuna, apart from the Bhagavad Gita, there was no other case where Arjuna became bewildered or confused or forgot his sense of duty. There was no other time, apart from the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna was mentally unstable. But the thing is that Arjuna momentarily presented himself as bewildered in the Bhagavad Gita. Now this is a bit of a big shock. Arjuna, he was a warrior. But obviously we know that to be a warrior, or to be anything in this material world, you have to be mentally stable. So Arjuna was mentally stable. But what is really shocking is that even though Arjuna, he was consistently mentally stable throughout, still in the Bhagavad Gita, he dropped his gun for a bow, he became confused. So His Grace Govinda Prabhu was answering the question, why did Arjuna drop his bow? Then he said that Arjuna momentarily presented himself as confused, not because he was confused. Yes, Arjuna was confused, but often when we see a person asking questions, we think, oh, this person is asking questions for himself. Like, for example, we're sitting in a class today. If the person next to you asks a question, normally we'll think that this person is asking the question. This question has got nothing to do with me. But we can see that Arjuna has momentarily presented himself as bewildered and asked questions for the first time for our own benefit. Like the Bhagavad Gita, they answer so many questions that even people in the material world have. That is why even people, we can see many book distribution stories where people who read Bhagavad Gita, as soon as they read Bhagavad Gita, their whole life is pretty much perfect. All their answers to their questions get answered. Who are they? What are they meant to be doing? What is their aim of life? Why are they in the material world? All these answers are being answered in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, of course, Arjuna knew that he was not the body, he was the soul. Arjuna knew that. But the main thing that we have to take away is that Arjuna asked questions for our own benefit. So we are very fortunate that in ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada has compiled everything in the form of his books to get that real intelligence. And we have a very huge advantage point in our own life. I think this will be the concluding point. It's 10:30. I'll make a few more points and I'll conclude here. By taking shelter, I'll conclude here, I promise. But by taking shelter of our previous acharyas, and by taking full advantage of the facilities that Srila Prabhupada has given us, we can see that we have a huge advantage. We have so much in front of us. We have the whole library. in front of us right now. All we have to do is just take advantage of it. Like Srila Prabhupada, he's put so much effort into writing these books, writing these letters, writing his lectures, just for our benefit. Like we can see, I mean, I was just recently, like when I was offering my obeisances, I just saw the book cupboard, and you can see that like Srila Prabhupada has given us so much nectar, so much divine instructions he has actually given us. But just by reading those instructions, all our complexities can be solved. Like in this material world, everyone goes through some sort of problem. But even these material problems can be solved just by opening Bhagavad Gita. Even my own spiritual master, His Holiness Janananda Goswami Maharaj, he was saying that there was always something for us to do to increase our intelligence. There's always something. We should not be necessarily wasting time. Like I remember I was in New Govardhan earlier this year serving Guru Maharaj, and Guru Maharaj was there, and I think we just finished unpacking his bag. He just arrived at New Govardhan. He was unpacking his bag, then he sat down, and I went outside on the veranda and I was looking at all the mango trees. And just momentarily I was just looking, and I was not even on the veranda for 5 seconds. And Guru Maharaj came to the veranda and he said, Kesh, I mean that time my name was Keshav, he said, Kesh, what are you doing? I said, Maharaj, I'm outside, I'm looking at the mango trees. And the Maharaj looks at me and he's like, why are you spacing out? And Maharaj said, he said, do you have a Kindle? And I have, Guru Maharaj carries a Kindle with him where he has all Srila Prabhupada's books. And he said, do something, read a book, chant, do something. He said, stop spacing out. And I think that was a really, really tough instruction that he gave me. But ever since then, I've been making sure that whenever Guru Maharaj is around, I have to have one book in my hand, or one japa in my hand at least. But we can understand, I mean, Guru Maharaj, I mean, he showed that like, we don't have much time with us. We have to somehow or other increase our intelligence. Last point. One more point. One room conversation that Srila Prabhupada was giving in London. And Srila Prabhupada was talking with one reporter. And that reporter said that, asked, is there something where we can sort of experience death while we are still alive? This reporter was asking Srila Prabhupada, can we experience death even when we are alive? And Srila Prabhupada said, alive, we have been given chance to understand God, but you don't understand. Next life, you will become dog. Now, Srila Prabhupada bluntly said that if you don't understand God in this life, you become dog. And this reporter was taken aback. And this reporter said, a dog? And Srila Prabhupada said, yes. And this reporter asked, why a dog? And Srila Prabhupada said, why not? I mean, and then people obviously started laughing. Then he said that suppose if God says that you become a dog, can you check it? And then Srila Prabhupada said that we have so much opportunity to actually understand God. But if we don't use the opportunities that we have, then Srila Prabhupada clearly said that if we don't use this life to understand God, we'll become dog. I mean, even in this material world, people are serving, I mean, this material life is meant to be serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're meant to be serving God, G-O-D. But what normally happens is that people start serving dog, D-O-G, other way around. So we can understand that to get true intelligence, we have to serve Lord Krishna, serve the spiritual master, and take advantage of all the questions that we actually have in front of us. Take advantage of all the scriptures that we have, and by doing this, we can actually use our advantage. At the end, we'll be able to surrender properly. So on that note, I'll conclude here. I know this class, I mean, I'm obviously not very qualified to speak. If I have said anything that if I may have committed any sort of offense or said something wrong out of rush or something, please do forgive me. By your mercy, hopefully I may improve in the service. So Hare Krishna. Kantarashama Bhagavata Mahaprabhu ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Tagore Brahmananda.